We will go ahead and get started. There is a bit.ly link, go.ncdpi.gov/AI, the number 4 principles. So this session is going to be about AI for principals, how you can use it in your practice, in your role, to help improve communication, and also just some strategies for how to get things rolling with AI in your school building. There will be some resources, some examples that I will show you that I created just as a demo, and I'll give you some strategies on how to take this and customize it so you get better responses. So we will dive in and get started. So I am Jordan Caldwell. I am the Northwest Digital Teaching and Learning Consultant with DPI. So I serve the amazing school districts in blue right there. I'm fortunate enough to serve those wonderful people up in the mountains down all the way to where I live down here in Catawba County area in Conover. So I do want to start off with this quick little disclaimer. Make sure we are going to be talking about some different tools today. I'll show different tools that I use to make and mock up some examples of how a principal could perform or utilize AI in their role. I'm not necessarily promoting a specific tool. I'm not saying this is the tool you need to go and use. I'm just providing you some examples. I want to make sure that you know, first and foremost, make sure you follow whatever your local guidelines and guidance are on generative AI usage. Don't go to your tech director or CTO in your district and say, this short guy with glasses and a beard on a state webinar said that you need to unlock this AI tool. That is not what we are saying. Make sure you follow whatever your local guidelines and policies are. Make sure you utilize generative AI tools that are approved for use in your PSU or in your school. And then also, I do want to mention, please don't ever put any personal identifiable information into generative AI tools. If you're unfamiliar with what personal identifiable information is, or PII, we have a lovely little graphic we borrowed from Transylvania County Schools that's in our generative AI guidelines. I've included that over there. But I do want to kind of take a step back and mention this, since this session is designed for principals specifically, and mention that please make sure that you not only keep your students' PII out of your generative AI tools and models, but also don't put anything identifiable into an AI tool for your staff members as well. So an example of why I say that is I'm going to show a use case a little bit later on how AI can support you in your role as a principal when doing things like observation and providing staff feedback. Those formal observations are part of a staff member's personnel files, so you wouldn't necessarily want to take specific information like the name of the individual, the individual teacher, and put it into your generative AI tool. Make sure you kind of scrub that data and remove those identifiers out of courtesy to them. I also wanted to provide you with a link to our North Carolina Generative AI Guidelines. It's a resource that's out there for all school districts and public educators in North Carolina to reference, and it kind of outlines appropriate ethical use of AI and what it should look like in public ed. It is constantly being updated. I think the last revision was a few months ago, back at the end of August. So that is a lovely resource that is there for you to reference at a later point. So I want to set the stage real quickly and talk about why it's important for principals to utilize AI and start thinking of what their vision for AI usage in their school should be. And first and foremost, I want to kind of lead off with the idea that the principal is not just the operational leader within a building. It's more than just maintaining that safe and orderly environment, making sure all safety protocols are in place, doors are locked, handling discipline. It's more than that, the role of the principal is. And first and foremost, the principal should be the instructional leader within that school. And so part of that is demonstrating appropriate pedagogy practices in content delivery. And now part of that is with digital teaching and learning. AI usage. And so we have an obligation as principals to model what appropriate, responsible, and ethical use of AI looks like for our staff. That can be something very simple, and we can do that in a very easy way. If you're using AI generated images in any of your content that you're presenting in staff meetings or sharing out with staff, giving a little disclaimer like you see in this image, underneath this image, showing that it's AI generated and showing how it was used. That is a very simple way to model for staff at a very basic level, responsible transparency related to AI usage in their practice. I always like to go back to while I was in my previous district before I joined DPI. It was right whenever ChatGPT got released. Something that I observed supporting from a central office technology role is there were some teachers that were doing amazing things with ChatGPT behind the scenes, but they weren't being very public about it. And it wasn't being shared out among colleagues, so they couldn't grow and learn together. And part of that was, I believe, personally, I believe it was a fear that they felt like they may be doing something wrong because they hadn't been given permission to utilize it in an educational capacity. Sometimes seeing your leader use a tool or perform a task gives you that permission to take academic risks and try new things in your classroom and in your planning. And so I think we owe it to our teachers as principals to make sure that we are kind of giving that gradual release and permission to utilize these tools and showing them it's okay to use AI. That's the world we live in now. We just have to do it in a responsible manner. I also think it's very, very important for principals to start crafting your school's vision for what AI will look like for both staff and students. I'm going to show you the student impact in just a little bit, a visual I use not just for this, but for a lot of things, and show you why it's important to have a school-wide vision at a bare minimum, if not a district or PSU vision for what appropriate use looks like. And also to increase efficiency. Principals, I know how much is on your plate. The task list can go on and on. Your to-do list never gets shorter. There's only more stuff added onto it. So I can't make more hours in the day for you, but what we can do is give you the ability to utilize and leverage generative AI to work more efficiently and get more out of the hours that you are in your building. So without kind of further ado, we'll kind of dive in and get started. I've got listed here just some common use cases for principals, how I have observed and heard from some principals that are currently in the role, how they have utilized AI in their daily practice. From drafting communication to stakeholders, whether that be an email or something like a flyer, social media post, or a newsletter. Using it to summarize policy and get clarification, legal clarification, while you're waiting on some guidance from, say, your school board attorney. We know that there has been a lot of legislation that has rolled out recently that pertains specifically to public ed, K-12 education in North Carolina. And so a lot of those were hitting right before the start of school, and there were so many, it was hard to stay on top of. I know principals and other district leaders that were leveraging generative AI to give them legislative summaries so that they could understand what the impact was and what they had to get done before school started back legally. Developing and revising and reviewing handbooks. that is one of those summertime tasks that happens every year, updating the staff and student handbooks for the following year. And I know over the summer, as we were traveling doing NC Bold, I heard from a few principals that were leveraging Gen AI to go in and have it review their handbooks and look for any areas that they needed to update, and look for opportunities to make things clearer. Providing actionable feedback, and supporting the coaching and mentorship type role that a principal has in growing their staff members. Aligning curriculum. We know that in North Carolina, we change standards quite frequently. Very recently, over the last 2 years, we rolled out some new science standards. And so as standards are rolled out, we can leverage Gen AI tools as principals to stay on top of the new standards, look for how it aligns to the old ones, and look for what we need to address in the grade levels as part of that new curriculum. And then planning events, whether it be a PTA meeting, some type of school-wide event, or a Spirit Week is currently going on at my son's school. If you need ideas for those school-wide events, instead of, I don't want to say wasting, but instead of allocating an hour to plan that at a staff meeting after school, you could go into that staff meeting with a rough draft generated by AI that will help get the ball rolling.
See you tomorrow.
All right. And so next up, getting the most out of your generative AI tools. What I advise you after you leave here today, I would recommend crafting a school profile, something that you can utilize in your prompts when you are prompting a generative AI tool to give it some specific information related to your school so you can get a more customized answer or response out of it. So great prompts. I always recommend using some type of prompting framework. One that we have mentioned in our generative AI guidelines is the craft framework that Vera has put together. But we know that great prompts, the better the prompt, the better the result you're going to get and the less revision it will require. And so great prompts, they provide the necessary details and context that the generative AI tools need to give you that customized response based off of your audience, your school community. And so some things that you may want to draft a paragraph or a few paragraphs together on are just a school profile. Include information that the AI may not have the context for, like your school vision and mission statement. Include the grade span that your school serves. Don't just say elementary school. Elementary can look different across all districts. I know there are some K2 primary schools. There's some schools that just serve grades 3 through 5. That looks totally different than a profile that you would create for a school that may be K5 or in some districts K6. We have some rural areas in my region that are K8 schools. So giving it that grade span context, so it knows the student demographics that you're working with. Include information in there about academic performance. Don't put, again, going back to our conversation about PII earlier, don't put in there any specific student performance. Don't put Johnny scored this on his third grade EOG. But what you can do is you can include weaknesses and strengths in your academic performance data, whether it be proficiency data, growth data, areas and grade levels where your students are outperforming the region or state average, any low performing subgroups that you may need some additional help and support reaching and improving. I know right now some areas in the Northwest region are really struggling with third grade ELA, fifth grade ELA, and eighth grade ELA. So including that in there can give a targeted approach on some academic areas that are of need for a school to address. And it can bring customized responses back in for you as the principal. including things like the number of teachers, the community setting. Are you in a rural area or an urban area? Is it a county that may only have and serve about 2,000 students, or are you in a school that has over 2,000 students that looks totally different and warrants its own customized response? And then I always recommend attach any type of grounding source that will help AI have the context to do a better job and give you that customized response. What I mean by a grounding source with generative AI tools, specifically some of the LLMs or large language models like Google Gemini or ChatGPT or Perplexity, you can attach and upload files. So if I'm a principal, I could upload my staff handbook or student handbook to the AI tool so it can reference what my specific expectations for my staff in my building are. Other than those that I have mentioned here and referenced in bullet points, can anybody drop in the chat some additional things that you think could be beneficial to add to a school profile? I think it's good for other principals to hear from each other. So if anyone could, please drop in the chat and I'll monitor that to see if there are any additional recommendations for a school profile that you think could be beneficial for a prompt. And if we don't have any responses, I'm going to see if maybe Brian or Jen or Stacy can provide any additional ones that they think should be added to that list. So, my wonderful colleagues, do you have any other recommendations for things to add? Thank you all. So Stacy said maybe adding in your school motto or mascot. Um, color codes, yes. So if you have a branding kit and you have your hex codes for your colors, you can then make things that are on brand and match the color and logo of your school.
Jordan,
Yes.
hey, I think, there's things that make like your school unique or special. If you have like a low turnover rate, or if it's a teaching working condition and you have some really high ratings, I think anytime you can use this almost as a marketing aspect to help your school stand out and make it unique would be a great opportunity if you have special programs like the STEM or the arts program or JROTC or those types of things.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you, Brian. Yeah, if you can, if things are going right in your building, we want to not only focus on the areas for improvement, but if things are going right, they're going right for a reason. And that can help us maybe triangulate what needs to be improved in other areas that may be lacking.
I love that you added in there about the attaching the grounding sources too, because I know on a lot of websites there are really helpful materials like the student handbook. There a lot of times are parent guides on the school websites, and we love to provide those resources to parents. But one way to kind of drive parents to those resources is to create a flyer that kind of summarizes them. But you'll provide, making those graphics using Canva or something like that. A lot of times it's really time consuming, but you could upload that entire resource to ChatGPT or Perplexity or something and provide your school colors and the logo and just have chat do it for you and create a summary that says, what are the top 5 reasons to look at this handbook, and then provide that in the email or as an attachment and say, and here's the link, for more details, look at our website. So it's a real easy way to kind of get parents to come to those resources that are already there on our websites.
That's awesome. Thank you for that strategy, Stacy. All right. So next up, crafting your school vision for generative AI. Before we talk about how you can use it to kind of make your life easier, I do want to kind of bring this up and why I believe it's important to craft a school-wide vision, not just for AI, but for anything digital teaching and learning, anything, any tool, communication app, anything that you're doing. Consistency is always going to be a key to success. And I always like to use these next two slides as a visual to represent why it's important. And so if we implement AI and let it be kind of free range across our school, every teacher's doing something different, and we don't have a clear understanding and common understanding as a staff of what AI use should look like for staff and students inside of our school. This is what it can do to a kid, and I want to talk through it. Imagine being a 7th grade student. I'm just going to say a 7th grade student in middle school. I have 4 academic teachers, math, science, social studies, English. I'm not even including my elective teachers or encore, whatever you call it in your school. Not even including those. I have 4 different teachers, 4 different sets of expectations. So if this teacher in first period lets me use AI however I want to, this one says no AI, and then I've got a little bit in between here and no common understanding or framework about what is allowed, what is not. That can be very confusing for a 12-year-old. It can also be confusing for a parent. Now put yourself in the shoes of a parent. Say I'm a parent at the high school level, and I have a 9th grader, an 11th grader, and a 12th grader. Again, on a block schedule, look at how many separate teachers that parent may be communicating with. And we always talk about why parents may be disengaged with us at the school, or parents just aren't involved. Look at all the different expectations we are then putting on our parent. It shouldn't be up to children and parents to read our minds as educators, and we can't control how things are perceived by parents and students. But what we can control, especially in our building as a principal, is we can get all of our staff through a PLC model or during a staff meeting. We can get them all on the same page with a shared understanding and put in place some type of guiding framework that supports appropriate and ethical use and puts those guardrails on it to where students and parents and staff all have a shared understanding of what is allowed and what is not with AI usage. And that's part of just building your digital culture in your building. So I've got up here just a couple strategies if you're looking for some low-hanging fruit. If you take this, if you're a principal and you take this to your instructional coach and you say, hey, we're going to do this at some point this year. Here are 2 PLCs or staff meetings that I've already got built out for you, ready to go. So what you can do is you can have discussions about academic integrity issues, because that is the number one barrier that some of your resistant staff will bring up when you start talking about AI in your school, is the issue with academic integrity. Kids are cheating with using the AI. You'll hear that argument. I have a resource here for you where you can take this and you can make it a PLC. There are resources in there that unpack what cheating looks like with AI and allows your staff to collectively collaborate on a discussion around what is acceptable and not acceptable use for student AI usage. And there is also a framework we have included in our generative AI guidelines I have linked out in a later slide that you can also include in that as support. And also just a honest discussion and reflection in PLCs about what AI's role should not just look like for students, but what should AI usage look like for teachers in their planning process. There are some teachers that are just taking a standard, plugging it into a tool like Magic School, and having it write their entire lesson plan for them. That is, and with no human input or revision of the teacher. At that point, that is not ethical use of generative AI tools. There needs to be some type of human level input and involvement. So having a discussion with staff about what is acceptable and what's not, because a lot of teachers just they want to know what the expectation is from the top down so that they know the rules so they can make sure they're following them. So having that conversation about what is appropriate for us as a staff to be using, how much should I be using it in my planning, and what should my role in that process be as a teacher. So there's 2 PLCs I've got planned out for you that you can implement this year. I've got a few resources I pulled from our AI guidelines that may help support some of those conversations. A lot of times there's a discussion about, well, what does appropriate AI use look like for students across grades, elementary versus middle versus high. And so I included this AI literacy timeline for K-12 students here that shows what AI literacy looks like across the various grade spans. If you want the full details around this and access to the original version of it, you can go to page 24 of our AI guidelines. It'll be right there for you. I've also got linked out the Zero to Infinity framework. This is an older version. There is now a 2.0 version. I just learned about that from the wonderful Jen Graham earlier today. Vera recently released a version 2 of this in our AI guidelines. But I have a picture of the first generation of this since it's the one I'm more familiar with. But implementing something like this at your school, or not just taking this one, maybe getting teacher input, customizing it and making it own, kind of give it the visual of tied into whatever your PBIS model is, or mascot or theme is at your school. But the Zero to Infinity framework is an example of something that could be implemented at a school or district level that frames and guides what appropriate and ethical use for generative AI looks like for students. That's one of the complaints teachers have, is they're saying everything with AI is some teachers are saying everything with AI is cheating. But what this allows the teacher to do is place a designation on each individual assignment to say, this is an assessment. This is completely AI free. I need to know what you know, not what your AI tool knows. Or if AI is going to be permissible and actually encouraged, a teacher could say, this is going to be an AI enhanced lesson or an AI empowered lesson, and here's what is acceptable to use AI for on this assignment. It gives those guardrails so students know what's expected of them and they are less likely to misstep at that point. And if they do misstep, it then becomes a coachable moment between teacher and student, and it then gives the teacher and you as a principal more teeth when you go to have those tough academic integrity discipline conversations with both the student and parents about inappropriate and unethical AI usage. I've also included right here some amazing resources that Vera put together if you want to see what an example of each of these lessons would look like. There are some sample lesson examples for Zero to Infinity, and there is also a custom GPT or chatbot that Vera created. I think using ChatGPT, she uploaded these grounding resources for Zero to Infinity framework, and teachers can go in and put in their standard, and it will give them examples of AI assisted or AI enhanced different lesson plan examples based off of their standards for each of the different levels of the framework. All right, so now we've talked about your school vision for AI. Now I want to kind of transition and take a look at some examples of how you as a principal can utilize generative AI in your own practice to work more efficiently and be a better communicator and save yourself a little bit of time. The first one, we always get asked questions that, I feel like sometimes teachers should know. And so it's things that are included in our handbook or our board policy. And sometimes they'll just ask us in conversation when they see us. And an example I like to use for this is if a teacher is planning a field trip. A lot of times they'll just call up the principal or stop by their office during their planning period and say, hey, I'm wanting to do a field trip. What do I need to do? What's the process for that? Well, it's probably outlined in the handbook or board policy. But a principal could make a custom, I call them chatbots, but it could be a custom notebook if you're using Notebook LM, or a custom GPT. But what it is you upload those grounding sources to give the generative AI tool knowledge about your institution, your school, or your district. And then the teachers you can share it with teachers so they can interact with it, just like students could. So an example of that, say that teacher is planning a field trip. They could go and put in to this Notebook LM that I created. I'm going to jump over and actually open up my Notebook LM to an example that I built out. And I took a copy of a staff handbook and student handbook from a school that I have worked closely with. I uploaded it as a grounding source, and I can say I am wanting to plan a kindergarten field trip to a pumpkin patch. That one jumps out because my kindergartner at home, he just went on that field trip earlier this week. What steps do I need to take to get it approved? I'm going to hit enter, and then it will look over the staff handbook and pull out specifics about what I need to do in order to get that approved, including all field trips having to be approved before September 1st. And then the individuals within the school that I need to contact. It gives me the bus costs, the cost per mile, everything that I need for planning. And then I can follow up as the teacher with additional prompts. So already, if a teacher utilizes this resource, when they come to actually ask me if it's okay or have a conversation about it, they've already taken some of that initial planning phase out of planning that field trip. And we're sitting down then at that point with their rough draft for their field trip proposal, and we can move forward from there, saving both themselves and me as the principal time. And they can get back to their planning period. Another use case for this, say that it's early in the morning, I wake up and I am sick. Right now, I woke up with a sinus infection, so you can probably hear it in my voice and nose. But I woke up this morning sick. Who do I need to notify and contact? What else should I do? And it will let me know that first thing that I need, it'll reference the staff handbook, and it will then let me know the first thing I need to do is send a text to the principal and vice principal and the school secretary, and then I need to put in a sick day into the absence management system that they use in this district called Red Rover, and it'll break down all the steps that I need to take. Instead of me having to call the principal and say, hey, I'm going to be sick, what do I need to do? I can save that additional line of communication as a teacher by using this amazing resource that a principal has put together for me. All right, I'm going to jump back in. Any questions about custom chatbots and how they can be utilized? As you're thinking about that, some additional grounding sources you can upload to your custom chatbot or GPT are things like your staff and student handbook, any type of board policies. If you use an instructional model or have a specific academic focus at your school, you could upload that. You can upload your school improvement plan and NC STAR materials that the PDF you can pull down off of there. Teacher working condition survey results. I think it may be a good idea, even if you're making a resource like this to use in your own practice to help with your role in making decisions as a principal. You can even upload the general statute that outlines elementary and secondary education in North Carolina. I think it's chapter 115 is the general statute that outlines all the laws around public education. If you are looking for a tool to use to create something like this, I have some recommendations over here. If you're a Google district, Notebook LM is a great, easy way to create a research kind of assistant version of this that you can then share out very easily with staff. And you can upload up to 50 sources and have a lot of those grounding informations to give it that context that you need. School AI also allows you to go in and create custom spaces. Instead of sharing those spaces with students, you would share them with your teachers. And you can also make those custom GPTs if, depending on your Google account level that you have in your district, the top two tiers of Google for Ed license allow you to create what's known as a gem. And then ChatGPT, if you have the paid version, allows you to go in and make a custom GPT. And as I'm talking, if anybody else in a principal role uses something and they would like to drop it in the chat for others to check out, please feel free to do so at any point. Thank you for sharing that, Brian. Notebook LM is part of your Google Docs suite and is free. If you don't have access to it and you have a Google account, it may be that it hasn't been enabled in your PSU. So again, follow whatever those local district guidelines and expectations and tools are. All right, next, graphics and newsletters. I want to start this conversation off with a little scenario that is right around the corner. So imagine this scenario. We are not far off of this. Imagine you open up your phone and it is showing this for Friday on your phone. There's a chance of some winter weather. You start kind of thinking, start going through the procedures, getting all your resources out, start getting those graphics ready to share out on social media, saying school's closed, all of that. Well, you get a call from your superintendent at 5 o'clock in the morning, or a message from them saying, yeah, we're going to close school. It's going to be a remote learning day. All your graphics you've already prepared are on school closures. You haven't done anything yet for inclement weather and the chance of it being a remote instruction day. So you need to make something on the fly at 5 o'clock in the morning while you're still wiping the sleep from your eyes before you've even had a chance to make a cup of coffee and get woke up. Let AI do some of that work for you. So I've got an example right here of a prompt that I used, and all I did is I used this prompt I've got outlined here. It says create a social media post or graphic announcing a school weather closure for a 6th through 8th grade middle school. Include the following. Today will be a remote learning day. Instructions for parents to check their communication app for specific details from your child's teacher, and students should check their school's email and learning management system, Canvas, Google Classroom, whatever you're using in your school, for instructions and assignments. If the directions are going to be check the website, check your email, include whatever specific directions you need your students and parents to follow. You then copy this. Oh, and I put the graphics should be visually appealing, colorful, and include snow-related imagery, just so that it doesn't give me a big Google Doc with 12 point font, Times New Roman, black and white, just a regular plain old doc that nobody's going to want to look at and read. So I took this, I copied and pasted it into Canva and used this Canva AI feature they rolled out over the summer. I hit enter and it gave me 5 very nice, clean, beautifully organized graphics and flyers that I could take and share out all within the matter of 2 minutes. So I could get this out on the school social media page or school website right when that call is going to be going out from the automated call system within the PSU. And so it took that information, organized it, and it gives you several different options to choose from. You can always go in and reprompt it to add in additional details, make changes. You can go in and manually customize and change information. But that's just an example to show you how fast and efficient it is to utilize this for that purpose. A lot of times we will delegate some of these tasks. As principals, you cannot do everything in your building. So a lot of times you have these kind of tasks delegated to individuals, whether it be a media specialist who handles your social media, somebody in your front office, maybe an assistant principal or academic coach. But at 5 o'clock in the morning in a time crunch like that, this gives you an option to where you may not be able to reach those individuals before the deadline is that you were given to get this sent out. So this allows you to make something nice, professional looking on the fly. I think it's important to talk about how we can use it and use it to kind of streamline communication and put out more professional looking graphics and quality products from our school's communication. I think it saves a lot of time because we talk about doom scrolling on social media. I know when I build out content, I'm guilty of doom scrolling Google Images because I'll put in something, a picture I'm looking for, and I'll keep scrolling and have to go to the next page and go to the next page because none of the images are just right. They don't capture everything I need in that image. Well, you don't have to worry about that with generative AI tools. Through your prompt, you can give it the specific details you're looking for in an image and have it create exactly what you are needing. And if anything's messed up in the image, you can just prompt it to change it to where you can get the right image for you. Also, when you're building out things like newsletters or any type of document that's going to be public facing, one of the most time consuming and, in my opinion, kind of tedious tasks, because I know some people enjoy it, but to me, formatting is just a tedious task. Let tools like Canva do that for you. So it will make something that is very visually appealing and can clean up those flyers and newsletters. So you're not always constantly having to resize, change the font size, and go through some of those tedious remedial tasks. I've got an example of another kind of prompt of how easy it is to make kind of a flyer to go out to schools in honor of Digital Citizenship Week coming up in the next week or so, October 20th through 24th. If you didn't know, that is Digital Citizenship Week. So I just wrote a quick prompt as to demo an example that I also put into Canva and said, create a flyer to share with K-5 elementary school families about Digital Citizenship Week on October 20th through the 24th. Make it colorful and visually appealing with graphics. Give it either a Halloween or pumpkin theme since we're in October. Include this link to Common Sense Media's Family Engagement Toolkit as a resource for families to use when having conversations with their child. And I just put that straight into Canva. It gave me 5 beautiful options, but this is one of the ones that it gave me. And you can see it even added in like an iPad right here for this pumpkin. It did go in and provide the specific URL link that I asked it to down here at the bottom. So parents and students have access to that link. And then I can go into Canva and add in any additional details manually that I need to by just typing in. You can see it put in a generic address for the school. I could go in and put the specific information, dates and times of any in-person events, and customize it based off of my needs. All right, and so one of the last things I want to leave you with as we are kind of getting ready, I think we've got about 15 minutes left. I want to share this with you before we close out. Yes, Stacy, that graphic does give the creepy carrot book that a lot of people use this time of year in media centers. It gives that type of vibe. I didn't think about that. It does give me that kind of vibe, though. All right. So I did want to leave our principals with one last additional place where they can maybe start working AI into your role as a principal and some strategies on how to implement that. Supporting with things like evaluations, feedback, and research. So we're going to kind of dive in, and I've got a couple tool recommendations to get you started in a few of these areas. So as a principal, principals are responsible for performing evaluations for all of their licensed staff members. And in doing so, if I am a principal at a high school, that means I'm going to have all of the math, science, social studies, English standards, all of my elective standards, PE, all of the arts, all of my CTE teachers. I would be conducting observations, formal observations on all of those individuals. It is impossible for any one person to be a content area expert and know every single standard that is taught in any grade, whether it be K-5, whether it be middle, or whether it be high. That is an unrealistic expectation. So when we go in and observe a lesson, it may be an area where we are not content rich as a principal based off of our experience. I tell everybody I'm a recovering social studies teacher. I was a social studies teacher in a previous life. And in that, I am very transparent that I am not a math person. The only numbers I dealt with as a social studies teacher were dates. And so with that, math may be an area, if I'm going in and doing an observation, I need help understanding what the standard is so I know what I'm watching unfold in the classroom. You can leverage generative AI tools to do some of that for you a couple ways. One, you can just take the standard from the teacher's lesson plan that you're observing, put it into a LLM, a large language model like ChatGPT or Google Gemini or Claude or Perplexity, and just prompt it. Say, I'm observing this lesson on this standard. I'm not as familiar with this topic. Could you break this down to me in very general, basic terms so I know what I should be looking for and what I should be observing? Explain it to me like I'm not familiar with this content area at all. And it can provide you with a breakdown, almost like a summary document of some things that can support you from the academic end in one of your academic areas you're not as familiar with. If you don't feel comfortable and you're not quite there yet, going straight into LLM and you're just not as good at prompting yet, and you need more practice, but you're still wanting to do this, you can go over into a tool like Magic School, and they actually have a standard unpacking tool where you could take the standard, upload it in, and say, unpack this for me so I know all the different steps that need to be accomplished in order for a student to master this standard. It will give you those observable pieces so you can see if they had been addressed during that lesson. Another example of how you can use AI in the observation and feedback and support process, that kind of coaching cycle that we need to provide to our staff members. After we observe something and we just put details about what we observed into their formal observation, we put in what the strengths of the lesson were, what the weaknesses were, and any opportunities for them to improve. It would be very great for the teacher if those opportunities to improve were actionable feedback and specific details of things they could take back, examples of things they could take back and implement based off of their content area, whether it be instructional strategies, whether it be behavior management strategies. We can utilize generative AI tools to give us a recommended list of things to then share out with our teachers for things for them to try, even if it's an area we are not familiar with, a content area we're not as familiar with. So again, you can prompt an LLM to support you in this and give those recommendations to you. Or you can go in and there is actually a teacher observation tool inside of Magic School that's built specifically for that purpose. And there's also another one I think kind of applies as an assignment scaffolder, to where if a teacher's just teaching straight at the top of the standard, but they haven't done anything to build up to that grade level yet, and that's a piece that's missing, the assignment scaffolder may be something that you can use to break it down and give some teachers additional direction on how they can achieve that standard through some unpacked, layered, scaffolded activities. And then research. We have all of our school-wide data, and we should be, as principals, very familiar with it and using it to drive and guide our decisions. And in doing that data, if we're just looking at the data and we're going off of our gut, we're not making research-based best practice decisions with our data. We're just making decisions on the data very surface level, and we're not truly unpacking on what the research shows will improve student learning outcomes in those deficit areas. But with all that goes on in the daily life of a principal, dealing with parent phone calls, say that you have some teachers you got to find coverage for, say that there's trouble with one of the school buses and it's going to be hanging out after school for a while till you get a replacement bus or it gets repaired. All of these different, dealing with discipline, which is going to be one of the biggest things you spend your time doing, all of these different things unfolding during a day. When does a principal have time to conduct a thorough research of a topic, conduct a literature review to then know what research says will improve this on, or will improve those outcomes for? And so with it, there's just not enough time in the day for a principal to have a healthy work-life balance and be able to not stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning conducting research. But with some of the newer versions of some of the LLMs that have came out over the last year, a term that you'll start seeing pop up, a feature that's been popping up in a lot of them, and I've got screenshots from Google Gemini on the top and ChatGPT on the bottom. A lot of them you'll start to see a new deep research feature. And what that does is it combs the internet and combs through scholarly articles, and it conducts a full literature review on whatever your topic is. And we can use that as a principle to have it go out, find and locate those resources, because sometimes just finding the research is the hardest part. We can have it find that research, bring it back, give us summaries so we know what applies to our students, our teachers, and our school, fitting that school profile or context, so we can make informed academic research-based decisions that will help improve our student outcomes. And so I did want to kind of show you where those features were and kind of what they do. They give you that in-depth analysis. It'll synthesize all the massive amounts of research that are out there on your topic. It even cites the sources so you can go and find that original source and bring it in and do a deep dive into the individual sources you find that are the most relevant and most impactful. And then you can even have it give you a literature review or a summary of the data that it has analyzed. So I think that's a valuable feature that principals need to utilize when going into a PLC. Before you even walk in to support a PLC, if you already know what the data says, and you know you have a underperforming subgroup, like say that your Hispanic males are underperforming and are only achieving, say, a 25% proficiency level, and you're only getting 40% growth out of that subgroup. That's a clear indicator. That's a subgroup we need to look at and work on as a school. So I'm going to go out, I'm going to have my LLM, I'm going to go to Google Gemini and have it conduct some deep research for me, bring back everything that all the research, and give me a summary of what research says will help that specific subgroup, my 3rd through 5th grade Hispanic males, achieve proficiency and growth. All right. I want to leave you with a few things. I do have some resources that you may want to check out. So for my principals that are in here, I've got this resource. It's 21 Chat GPT prompts for principals. So there's some little nuggets there for you to give a try and see the results that you end up getting out of there. I've also got this learning series. It's the AI Principles Learning Series that's designed to help school leaders understand, use, and actually lead their school community in AI implementation. I've got linked out AI for Education's prompt library, and then I also have our generative AI guidelines. Stacy dropped something in the chat, said she put in there an unpacking coaches graphic from Canva. So I will link that in. As long as I don't forget, I will link that in on the resources slide as well. And I want to thank you all for coming out. If you don't mind, all of us, all of the consultants, and all of DTL, we like to get feedback on all of our webinars and all of our in-person professional learning that we do. See if it was useful, find out what worked, what didn't, what you need more of, what we could do better. Please, if you don't mind taking a couple minutes, I'll drop this in the chat for you. Please go in and provide me with some feedback. Let me know. And thank you, Brian, for dropping that in for me. Provide me some feedback. And I tell everybody, please be honest on it and know that you're not going to hurt my feelings. If today was a waste of your time, please let me know that so I can better support you in the future. You're not going to hurt my feelings. I take feedback well, and I try and use it to improve my own personal practice. So I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to come join us today. I am